suspect there are some of you here who may have been, as I have for years, a reader of the New York Review of Books, what we sometimes call the New York Review of each other's books. But the current issue has an ad from the Johns Hopkins Press about some of their recent publications, and it's entitled Confronting History. Not the easiest thing to do. And history is not really an exact science. In my relationship with contemporary students, I'm learning that they have quite a different perspective than I had growing up in school when I was assigned a history book. It was history, I was reading history. And now questions are being asked because history is not an exact science. History evolves and shifts and changes over years. Particularly, I guess, with respect to wars, we see them early and in a more patriotic memory, and then we get more perspective as time goes on. Sometimes it's very controversial, but that's history. It is a changing process, and I think many young people are beginning to understand that. But I think what Jim Farwell has done here cannot really be questioned as a serious piece of objective history. We don't get a lot of that, particularly about certain parts of the world. The main theme I want to stress is that history matters. As Sam Huntington wrote many years ago, culture also matters. And what Jim has done here, without any argument one way or the other, rare today, is present us a history of Pakistan. Very, very much needed in this day and time, because it will become more and more of a controversial question. We have military officers who served on the ground and who see the consequences, who are warning us about and asking us to take a look at the history. We have others who are a little more perhaps chauvinistic and threatened by what history says. Jim is not trying to make any case. That's why I was very much attracted to this, and it's desperately needed in the American public right now, particularly for what's ahead of us in terms of discussion and debate about that part of the world. He really just looks at it that way. Now, Jim Farwell is an unusual character. He and I met in a taxi cab on our way to a hearing at the Senate some years ago, and we discovered that he worked, I guess, for President Nixon, and I was on, that period, and I was on J. Edgar Hoover's enemies list, and we had quite different backgrounds, and we compared that, and then I discovered that he had some years ago a play at Sundance. He actually has a movie at Sundance. Now he has a play about to open perhaps sometime next year in London. But he also has worked in strategic communications and what I would call strategic understanding. And that's why I have come to feel this book is so important. So I say it doesn't argue one way or the other. It just gives us a look. And I think the American public, more than anything else, as they watch and hear this debate that's ahead of us, need some place where they can go to get that look. So I salute and congratulate Jim, but the rest of us too, for having this effort to set the history in front of us of this troubled part of the world, which will be more and more a sense of debate. So Jim, I thank you for taking the time and the effort and the background that you bring to this and presenting us with this very important work. James Farwell.
Well, Juliana and Joe, thank you for that kind of introduction. We can all go home now. You've heard all of the great things. Joe Duffy was gracious enough to write a really wonderful introduction to this book, which was a lot of fun to write. one of the people who is here today must be acknowledged. In the back of the room, he's hiding from me, but that's Dr. Marvin Weinbaum of the Middle East Institute. Books like this work when people like me are lucky enough to meet people like Dr. Weinbaum and other people. This book was peer-reviewed very extensively by great people. Nobody more so than Dr. Weinbaum, who became really the chief reader for the book. And he, like Sir Richard Dearloffe, who was kind enough to say some nice words on the back, and General Scott and General Daly, have all been wonderful and great critics. I remember, you know, when you write a book, there's this enormous sense of relief when you have finished it. You think, my God, I have finished the book. And then you send it off to people like Dr. Weinbaum and to General Daly and Sir Richard, and you say, can you look at the book and maybe say some kind words, and what do you think about it? And they all write back and call you up and they say, this is going to be a great book someday, rewrite it. And so one goes through that process, and eventually one finishes a book. But I must acknowledge the incredible input of Dr. Weinbaum, who was a very tough taskmaster to make sure that I got it right, and that goes for the other people. So Marvin, thank you very much, and homage must be paid to those who are my mentors, to whom I owe so much. I am by background a lawyer and a political consultant, and became involved with the Pentagon after 9/11 because some people there wanted me to look at various things that the Pentagon was doing from the point of view of a political consultant, an information war strategist. And one thing has led to another, and now almost all of my time is devoted to national security. But with my background, and this frames the context in which my book was written, I'm interested in how political players use communication to compete for power, and how they use communication to consolidate their grip on power. And it's through that dimension that this book examines what makes Pakistani politics tick. One of the things that you learn, and I've worked here at home at all levels, from local elections in Congress and the Senate to the presidential level, and I've done the same thing abroad, but one of the things that strikes those of us who do campaigns is that what politicians say in public and what they do in public actually matters a lot more than what they say or do in private when you want to understand the political dynamics. As an example, in America, all of us are watching what's going on in the Iowa primary to see who will win the Republican nomination for president. You don't need to be in the back room with Mitt Romney or Rick Perry or Newt Gingrich or anybody to figure out what the dynamics of that race are. We can all look at it by watching television and going on the internet and seeing what they're saying and doing. That doesn't apply to every country, but it applies to most countries in the world, just as one of the things very few people realize is that most elections around the world are handled by American political consultants. I like to say that we export two things in America that are unique. One are our movies, and the other are our political consultants. And I'm not sure about the value of the fact that political consultants do that, but that's what we do. And it's lots of fun, and it's very interesting. And so that's the dimension through which I looked at this. And I was also very interested as I went along to write this book with the events of 2011 to examine the current status of Pakistani politics. That is to say, what was the impact of the attack on bin Laden, not only in Pakistan, but on the dynamic between the United States and between Pakistan, which is and has been very complicated over many decades. And one of the conclusions that I reached, and I should say to you that my remarks today are not going to regurgitate what's in the book. The book is available as a Christmas present, an Easter present, a New Year's present, and wouldn't want to deprive you of the pleasure, but I thought I would share with you some of the insights that I took away from my research and in writing this. But one of the things that strikes me about the post-bin Laden era is that in Pakistan is that the politics there today are very much the outcome of 5 decades of dysfunctional politics. Pakistan is a fascinating country. It has very talented people. I don't think that in this country Pakistanis get credit for the extraordinary energy and the extraordinary amount of talent that the people of that great country have. I have a lot of respect for Pakistan. I think it's a lovely country. But one of the things that's interesting about it is that it doesn't have politically a particularly strong national identity. And that has bred a